The public is being trained to look at the sky. They are shown assets like the Golden Dome missile defense system, a strategic necessity for the U.S. in places like Greenland. This is a deliberate misdirection. The most dangerous vectors of attack are not kinetic. They are silent. The primary vector is beneath the surface. CSIS reports confirm the global economic and military system runs on a few dozen undersea fiber optic cables. This is the central nervous system of global finance and command and control. The cost to sever these nodes is fractional. The economic impact is total. It is the perfect asymmetric lever. The second vector is sensory deprivation, satellite blinding. The data-dependent AI war platforms being field-tested in Ukraine become liabilities without constant satellite linkage. According to RUSI, low-cost attacks can disable critical satellite functions, not by destroying them, but by rendering them blind. The objective is to sever the optic nerve of the state. This protocol is designed to create one outcome: the blind Leviathan. A superpower with overwhelming kinetic force rendered deaf and dumb. Its carriers are adrift. Its drones are inert. It cannot distinguish a system failure from a decapitation strike. In this state of paralysis, conventional responses are invalidated. The only remaining protocol is launch on warning, triggered not by an incoming missile, but by silence itself. The war in Ukraine is not a military operation. It is a solvency crisis. We are told it is about territory and ideology. This is a fatal misreading of the data. At its core, the kinetic phase of the conflict is a domestic liability for the Russian state, a drain on capital and political stability so severe it forces a strategic pivot. This isn't a theory, it's an accounting protocol. Analysts at RUSI have quantified this. A prolonged, high-attrition conventional war functions as a negative asset on the state's balance sheet. The kinetic cost in the materiel and manpower becomes unsustainable. Public support erodes. This creates a catastrophic domestic liability. When a state's primary strategy is hemorrhaging value, it is forced to find a new one. It must short the system that is pricing it out of existence. This is the pivot point. Weakness compels asymmetry. The state abandons the expensive symmetric battlefield and opens new fronts where it has leverage. These are not random acts of aggression. They are calculated, asymmetric attacks designed to be economically and politically impossible to counter proportionally. We see this in the deployment of AI-driven systems to test fuel infrastructure, a vector identified in Palantir's operational data. The goal is maximum economic damage for minimal kinetic cost. The political vector is just as critical. Reports of Ukrainian officials engaging with Trump envoys for peace talks are not a diplomatic sideshow. This is an asymmetric political attack. The objective is to fracture the policy cohesion of the United States by creating a parallel track that bypasses the established state apparatus. It introduces systemic uncertainty, a non-kinetic weapon that degrades an opponent's ability to execute long-term strategy. Each of these asymmetric attacks invalidates a symmetric response. You cannot sanction a drone swarm with more sanctions. You cannot arrest a political backchannel. The targeted power is forced up an escalatory ladder. The response must become strategic, as seen in U.S. assessments regarding missile defense systems in Greenland. The battlefield moves from Ukraine to the global system itself. The solvency crisis of one actor becomes an accelerant for systemic nuclear-level risk for all actors. This is the mathematical certainty of the current protocol. The entire economic model of conventional warfare is now insolvent. The math has been broken. According to analysts at RUSI, the central equation is this: a $5 million main battle tank, a pillar of terrestrial power projection, can be neutralized by a $500 first-person view drone. This is not a balanced trade. This is a systemic bleed-out. This is the democratization of violence in its most kinetic form. It means the barrier to entry for inflicting strategic-level damage has collapsed. Weaker state and non-state actors now possess asymmetric leverage, capable of imposing disproportionate, ruinous kinetic costs on a technologically superior but economically vulnerable adversary. Every lost tank is not just a tactical defeat. It is a push toward a national solvency crisis, forcing the targeted power up the escalatory ladder where the only remaining options are systemic. The battlefield is no longer a physical location. It is a condition of systemic fragility. Analysts at CSIS identify these vectors not by flags on a map, but by their function. These are the gray zones, regions designated as laboratories for asymmetric protocols. The recent U.S. travel warning for Somalia, coinciding with the end of temporary protected status, is not a humanitarian headline. It is a market signal. It designates the region as a viable staging ground, a proxy laboratory where the kinetic cost of testing new leverage models is effectively zero. The Ukraine conflict serves as the primary live-fire testing environment for these protocols. It is not merely a war, it is a full-spectrum R&D process. As reports indicate, the deployment of AI-driven targeting systems, fueled by firms like Palantir, is refining a new doctrine. This doctrine is designed to maximize economic damage against a superior adversary at a minimal kinetic cost. The goal is not territorial conquest, but the creation of unbearable political and financial liability for the opposing power. This asymmetric leverage then translates directly into the political sphere. Reports of Ukrainian officials engaging with U.S. political envoys for peace talks are not a sign of de-escalation. They are the intended result of the protocol, using battlefield success, generated by asymmetric means, to force negotiation at a strategic level. The weaker actor bypasses the conventional military ladder and directly engages the political apparatus of the superpower, creating a solvency crisis for its existing foreign policy. This protocol forces the targeted power onto a different axis of conflict. When conventional and economic responses are invalidated, the only remaining levers are systemic and strategic. This is why discussions suddenly pivot to assets like Greenland. According to public statements, its geography is deemed critical for a Golden Dome missile defense system. This is not a random geopolitical ambition. It is a predictable countermove on the escalatory ladder, a launch-on-warning posture becoming the default response to a world where conventional weakness is the primary accelerant for strategic-level threats. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a strategy. It is a systemic protocol triggered by specific data inputs. The core premise is that a nation, upon detecting an incoming strategic missile attack, launches its own nuclear forces before the incoming warheads can destroy its retaliatory capability. The decision window is not hours, it is minutes. The vector of attack is no longer exclusively kinetic. CSS analysis confirms that a sophisticated cyber attack can blind early warning radar systems. This creates the fog of digital war, a state where a commander cannot distinguish between a genuine sensor malfunction, a system test, or a decapitating first strike in progress. The data feed is gone. In this scenario, the absence of data becomes the data. The protocol compels a choice. Option 1. Assume it's a glitch, wait for confirmation, and risk the total liquidation of your strategic assets. Option 2. Assume the blindness is the prelude to impact and execute the launch protocol. The critical vulnerability of assets like the Golden Dome missile defense system, which requires locations like Greenland for effective use, becomes the trigger. The current AI war tests in Ukraine, documented by Palantir, are refining the very tools required to execute such an attack. Fear does not drive the decision. Mathematical certainty does. An asymmetric cyber attack invalidates a proportional response, forcing the targeted power onto an escalatory ladder where the only remaining lever is strategic launch. This is the new blueprint for systemic risk. The strategic discourse is saturated with kinetic threats, hypersonic missiles, and the geography of launch-on-warning systems, as highlighted by discussions around Greenland's role in missile defense. This focus is a systemic liability. While stronger powers calculate trajectories and material costs, a different protocol is executing. The geopolitical theater, from peace talks involving non-state envoys to managing domestic status changes for foreign nationals, serves as the perfect signal noise. It occupies the administrative state's bandwidth. The real vector is not physical, it is logical. The AI wargaming being beta tested in Ukraine, as confirmed by PLTR's operational demand, is the blueprint. It is not merely a tool for targeting, it is a weapon for systemic degradation. An asymmetric actor, possessing no carrier groups or strategic bombers, does not need to match kinetic output. They only need to invalidate the target's logistical and economic solvency. The objective is to force a response where the kinetic cost is mathematically absurd, paralyzing the decision-making cycle. Therefore, the calibration shot is imminent. Within the next 12 months, expect a coordinated, attribution-impossible cyber event targeting a primary U.S. maritime logistics hub. The event will manifest as a 48 to 72-hour shutdown of the port's digital crane and container processing network. It will not be explosive. It will be silent. The financial cost will be in the billions, but the strategic cost will be the demonstration that the core circulatory system of the U.S. economy can be throttled without a single shot fired. This is not a drill, it is a test of solvency.